Alright, hello everybody, I'm Chris Bartle, welcoming you back to another episode of Rock Roundtable. I'm going to urge everyone to like and subscribe to this video. And today I have with me my co-host Ben,
Hello. Oh.
Matthew, and Santiago.
Hello there.
Alright, so today we are going to be discussing Electric Light Orchestra, as well as what we think the best Electric Light Orchestra album one is, as well as the best free album one by Electric Light Orchestra. We've already done this for Led Zeppelin, The Beatles, and The Who, but it's been a little while since we last did this format, but today we will be doing it on Electric Light Orchestra. Alright, anyone have any opening thoughts they want to say?
Well, I was gonna say that Electric Light Orchestra, for me, it's one of the best bands of the 70s because I think it has such a unique sound that makes it very different from the other bands from the 70s. And I even think sometimes that it's a band that should deserve more recognition from the public. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree.
What I was gonna say is that I think Christopher's review of On the Field Day was overly harsh.
It might have been, as I said in my review of On Your Day, I feel like it had a lot of good ideas, just not all of them was executed as properly and is like not executed as well as on a lot of other albums. You know, there are a lot of albums where every idea on it is executed well, such as like A New World Record or Face the Music generally, or Time, whereas on the Field Day I do feel like some of the songs aren't quite executed to the fullest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I actually like that album. I was listening today that album because I didn't listen to it previously like that closely, and I think there are some great songs there. I would say, like there's this one called what was I think was Daybreaker. Well, there was one song that even remind me from one of Out of the Blue, the like the melody. I think it was from the Standing in the Rain. They're like I don't know how to even sing that part. Well, there was this piano that's very similar from Standing in the Rain, and I would say it's like the basis from Yellow Sound on the third day. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I said in my review of it. I'll say this again. Um, it is kind of the basis for their later sound, somewhat of a more, in some cases, single-oriented sound, although they're still an album-oriented band. Is of course some of these songs like Showdown of the Showdown. I also think is actually only on the American version of the album and not on the UK version. Um, Mama Bell. I will say, that song Daybreaker, I did actually say I liked in my review. I actually like side two quite a bit. It's just I do think side one is a little bit weak. Um,
yeah, I agree. I agree.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean that's basically my opinions on Field Day. I think side two is good. Maybe not as good as most of the sides of albums, but I do think side two is good.
Because I feel like Electric Light Orchestra went like and on every album evolving, just like I will even compare to the Beatles. Like every album was just evolving to just a peak. Like I feel that their peak was Out of the Blue. I think that was their greatest creative moment in their career, and they were leading up to that with the previous albums from In the Third Day.
Yeah, well, my personal opinion is, um, I do think Electric Orchestra 3 is probably the one of the bigger shifts they went in terms of format, at least up through from Out of the Blue until Discovery, or maybe Discovery until Time. Before that, I'd say the biggest shift in sound and is probably with On the Field Day in the middle of it. Because On the Field Day really is kind of a shift from some of what more of these longer, more proggy stuff like you had on one and two to more sort of somewhat more concise kind of a bit more pop rock sort of singly, even if they don't the songs won't all necessarily singles sort of format that would be prevalent throughout really the rest of their career. So, I mean, On With Your Day is a very, I think, important step in their kind of discography in terms of them becoming kind of at their, reaching the peak of their power. But it is kind of the odd one out. Electric Light Orchestra 1 and 2, they're different. With Electric Light Orchestra 3, it has a little bit of that still in it, of 2 is still in it, but it also, some of the stuff it does isn't as good as what the next solo albums after it does. The stuff that it's doing that they also do. Showdown, I think, is a good song. I like Side 2 as well, although the last song is, I think, not, like, the best album ender. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good album. I'm actually holding my copy of it here right now.
Also, something interesting to mention is that John Lennon heard this album in the third day, and he said that ELO was like the son of the Beatles. Like, what will the Beatles sound after their breakup? So he was referring specifically to In the Third Day.
Yeah, it was my understanding that he was referring specifically to Showdown. I wasn't clear if he had heard the full album or if he had just heard the single. I believe he was doing some sort of like guest spot or something as like a radio DJ.
I guess.
I don't know. That was my understanding. But yeah, it's a very important album in the discography. But I do think it is the weakest one until Xanadu, if we're counting Xanadu, or probably Evil Secret Messages or Balance of Power. It's definitely better than Balance of Power. Secret Messages, I'm still kind of undecided about whether I like it or On With Your Day more. But the first one's kind of the core sound up through Evil, Out of the Blue, Discovery. It's, I think, the weakest one. Alright, so
yeah,
we're supposed to be discussing what we think is the best Electric Light Orchestra album one, so the greatest, what we consider the main, like, best album one of consecutive albums. Now, later on we'll do the best 3 consecutive albums, but right now we're not doing that. Right now we're just doing the best album one, just of consecutive albums. So, I guess I want to start with you, Ben. What are your thoughts on the greatest Electric Orchestra album one?
I've had a few separate thoughts. So the first one I've had is just ELO 1 through Secret Messages. I mean, I guess you could argue all the way for Balance of Power, so it's the original one, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about Balance of Power.
I'm to be honest, other than Calling America and So Serious, and also the one Endless Lies that's also on the 2 LP version of Secret Messages, other than those songs, Balance of Power's kind of mid. It's pretty forgettable. It's got, in particular, rather poor production, and I understand Jeff Lynne purposely, to some degree, just didn't waste much time on it, because it was just a contractual thing. It is just oftentimes very weak, even if you think the songwriting's good. Composition-wise, it is kind of generic 80s, mid-80s pop rock. And I think in that format, So Serious, Calling America, I think those are both good songs, even if they don't really have any real orchestra to them. But otherwise, I would consider it a pretty weak album. As I said, I like On With Your Day better than it, by quite a bit, actually, so... Go on.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? So I've been kind of divided between that. I mean, I think ELO 1, I mean, the Electric Light Orchestra, or No Answer, or whatever we're calling it, through Secret Messages is a good pick for, like, a main album one. I think that there's an argument that all those albums have good, well, there's also good stuff about Balance of Power, but all those albums have good things on it. I don't think I'm counting Xanadu as a part of that.
Yeah, I don't think counting Xanadu unless somebody specifically wants to count Xanadu, in which case they can. Well, we can just
But
count the side 2 of Xanadu. I mean, we're not counting side 1 of Xanadu at all, because it's not really relevant.
but also part of me thinks like the album one that I'm most familiar with of Eldor's is Eldorado Through Time. I think that those are all albums I've heard multiple times, as opposed to the first 3 Yellow albums. There's lots of songs I know from there, so I'm inclined to go with the formal suggestion, the longer 71 through 83 run, as opposed to the shorter 74 through 81 run, just because there was, I think, a lot of excellent music on those first 3 albums, even if part of me feels like all that is still leading up to, in some ways, the Eldorado, and there was like a shift in Eldorado, I think, in quality, and well, arguably you could also pinpoint it into face music, but I think I mostly agree with your assessment in your YouTube videos, Chris, that Eldorado seems to be the point. It seems to sort of shift towards the more classic format, I guess, as opposed to a more prog rock. I mean, it's all prog rock.
Listen, Ben, Eldorado keeps kind of the best of both worlds. It still has this kind of concept, sort of holistic sort of story to it. I mean, it's the first of their concept albums, but it keeps the kind of prog sensibility, but it has it in the format of these shorter, more concise, well, not too concise, some of them are like 5 minutes long, but shorter, more concise kind of songwriting. It's not these long, really overdrawn instrumental sections like on... Although I like those, but it's not those like on the first 3 albums. It's kind of songs that could be singles, even if they weren't all singles, but they are songs with very memorable lyrics, but relatively short, relatively concise, you know. And I do think it is also worth praising them for being able to make what feels like a very complete, not underbaked at all, concept album like that on a single LP. You know, The Who, they had to have a double LP to do it. Pink Floyd, now they hadn't done theirs yet, they would have to have a double LP album to do it. Electric Orchestra was able to do it, and was able to do it great, and not have it feel underbaked at all, and have it feel just as fulfilling as those other albums, if not more so, on a single LP, and I like that. Alright, sorry for the tangent, man, continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways there is still like important shifts going on, even within the Eldorado to Time thing. There's still a shift from more of a prog rock sound to more prog rock combined with other things. That I think is still important, but ultimately, really, to get the journey, I think you gotta do ELO first album through at least Secret Messages. Balance of Power is a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit, overly 80s, I guess. Doesn't have Kelly Glow Cut. It's kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that really should count as the main pop album one. I would be open to somebody arguing that it should.
Ben, I do want to note here briefly that Eldorado does not have Kelly Glow Cut on it either, or any of the albums before it.
Yes, yeah, I know. But that still does represent, like, a big difference between that and the preceding album.
Yes, well, people who watched my review of Out of the Blue know that I'm actually a fan of Kelly Glow Cut and his parts, especially his vocal parts on the albums. Santiago, what are your thoughts on it? This.
I actually agree that I really love when Kelly, it's like Kelly's voice is it's really prominent, or well, it's obvious in the songs. I think he has really great vocals along Jeff. I think the two of them really implement each other very well. I mean, the vocally speaking.
Yeah, they do
Like
good
for example,
harmonies.
yeah, yeah, I really like that. Also the harmonies and overall, yeah, the yellow harmonies. I think they're quite unique. I really like them. But about Kelly, one of my very favorite songs that you can hear Kelly along voice is Above the Clouds. I think that song is great, and it's a shame it's such a short song, I will say. But I really like how you can hear them both singing, and that part when they you reach the a high note uh, in Kelly's voice. I really like that part in Above the Clouds. Yeah, that's my opinion
Yeah. Yeah.
about
Well,
that.
what are your opinions on the best Electric Orchestra album one?
Well, overall, I think they the pacing from the first. I would like to give a little bit of context here and talk how it began. Like I think it went from such a big different compare the first album that was what was it called? The Electric Orchestra one.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the 80s, I think the evolution is quite amazing. I would say really. I really like the first concept album of them, which is Eldorado. I think it's such an amazing album. Honestly, it's an album that I don't think many people talk about in the rock panorama side of you know, of the 70s. Uh, but I think it's one of the greatest concept albums there is of the 70s. I really like how innovative is Jeff with the sound. Especially was I don't know if maybe you can correct me, but it was like especially using the violins the first time using the violins in Eldorado. I don't know, but I really like the instrumentation in that album. And I can see the inspiration Jeff took from the Beatles in his sound and even all those references he does to the Beatles because I know he's a big fan of Beatles. Uh, Also in Face to Music, in Face the Face the Music. I think that's also such a great album. But I will say that my personal favorite, and for me the best, one of the best albums of the 70s, if not it's out of the blue. Nevertheless, I really like A New World Record. I think it's in fact the album that got me into Electric Light Orchestra and made me a big fan when I hear a Livin Thing. It's because those harmonies, you know, that I was saying previously about the harmonies, it was like really caught me, you know, hearing the harmonies like it's a living thing, you know. So I was blown away when I heard that song. So I heard the whole album then I went into hearing Wild West Hero. Then it got me into buying the vinyl of Out of the Blue, even without knowing much about it, and I fell in love with it. Like I think it's one of those albums that you say there's no bad song in it. You know, it's just my personal opinion. And then they took a really big shift, I will say, after Out of the Blue, which is Discovery. I think it's very different from the previous 70s albums, I would say. It's more like leaning towards, you know, pop rock or like the tendency of disco music with, like, for example, Last Train to London or kind Shine a Little Love. I think, yeah. Even though it still has the ELO sense there, that they are, the traditional sound. Like for example, the Diary of a Horace Wimp. I think it's one of my favorite along On the Run. It's also a great album, I would say. I would put it in the second place. Like my top will be like the top one will be Out of Blue, the second one will be Discovery, and the third one will be like A New World Record. Yeah. And the 80s is quite interesting. It's very interesting. Honestly, along Eldorado, which is a concept album, I will say that also Time is a great concept album, but it doesn't follow like a sequence in the story or whatever. Like I know this is like a concept album, Time, but even though it doesn't have like a sequence in the story, or I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
not very familiar with this.
At times,
It's
plot is a bit less coherent than Eldorado's. Just listening to it and
yeah,
thinking about the lyrics, I do like though its sort of vibe, kind of the retrofuturist aesthetic, as well as of course the as usual top-notch songwriting from Jeff Lynne.
yeah, it's very sci-fi. Honestly, it's very sci-fi album. I really like that touch, especially the beginning. It really begins strong. This album begins very strong with the um the prologue and Twilight, which is my favorite and one of the most famous of ELO's catalog. But yeah, I think Time it has a great touch of retro futuristic vibes into it. But after that, honestly, like I don't know. I'm not a big fan of late 80s yellow. Like I heard, um, what was it? What was it called? This album that has Endless Lies. Yeah, I think Secret Messages, even though it's not like a great album of yellow, I think it still have some great songs in it. Honestly, like there's some stuff there that it's good and you can tell, okay, this is very 80s, yellow 80s, and I like that. Also, talking about Xanadu, even though it doesn't have like it's not like a whole yellow album, like it has some yellow songs by Jeff, but it's not entirely made by yellow. But I would like to mention here that I really like this song called I'm Alive from Xanadu. I think it's such a great song along all over the world. Yeah, Xanadu has some great bangers there from yellow. And aside that, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I can tell you about ELO in this era.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, Xanadu is a bit kind of hard to classify because, like, when we did the Beatles and we were discussing the Beatles album one, we kind of had it in the middle of that episode stop and debate whether we wanted to include Yellow Submarine or not because it was only really, when it's the full LP version of it, it's really only one side of the Beatles and then the other side is, instrumental. Well, with Xanadu, you kind of have the same thing. It's one side of Electric Light Orchestra and then there's the other side that's Olivia Newton-John and just stuff by whole usual songwriters. I will say that I do like the song Xanadu, which is sung by Olivia Newton-John, but also on the um, Electric Orchestra side, it was written by Jeff Lynne. There is actually a Jeff Lynne-led version. I think, prefer the original Olivia Newton-John version. And I do feel like it's, honestly, if you're going to do a movie and a soundtrack with both of them, I do feel like it's kind of a shame that they didn't have more of whole singing songs written by Jeff Lynne. As it is, we really only got that one, the title song, Xanadu, and I do feel like it's too bad we didn't get more songs that were sung by her, but written and instrumentated by Electric Light Orchestra, because I feel like it was a good pairing on that one song, and if you're going to have a movie whose soundtrack was done by both, they should have gone the full way, done the whole thing, and they really just didn't, and I wish they had, honestly.
Yeah, I agree totally with you.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Alright, Matthew, you haven't said much. What are your thoughts on Electric Orchestra's best album one?
You don't say. I think I had like a pretty set, um, what I thought was the best ELO. Run. At first, first album is going to be their, probably people's most popular album from them is Out of the Blue, which is like a massive 17-track album, and it has a lot of their more popular songs, especially Mr. Blue Sky, which, although it's like almost overdone with that song is in like popular media, it's like the one ELO song that people use a lot in movies and TV show. It's still a really great song, and just has like what I found interesting, like that probably like the last part of that album is like essentially a melody, like kind of similar to like Abbey Road, where like the certain part of the album is like a continual. I think like probably the second side of Abbey Road, where it's like a single melody, where it's like nowadays it's basically like individual songs, but like felt like it was like one continuous.
The Abbey Road medley, yeah.
Yeah, it's a continuous medley. So that's kind of like the same with, Out of the Blue, which is like similar.
Are we talking about, Matthew, are we talking about side 3 of Out of the Blue or side 4?
Yes.
Side
yes.
3.
Yeah, side 3, which is a continuo for Rainy Day.
Yeah,
which is
total for Rainy Day.
Which starts with Standing in the Rain and then ends with Mr. Blue Sky. I'm sure that's like a really good album of theirs. Then we go with Discovery, which is actually my favorite Electric Light Orchestra album. I think it's like one of the more underrated ones they have. It has, I was gonna say my favorite ELO song, but that's a different subject. It has probably the best. Well, no, I was gonna say this has the best opener of an ELO album, which I think is a different one. Yeah, Shine Little Love, which is a great song, like very disco, progressive rock, all that, and it goes through a swift 9 tracks, and then it goes to Don't Bring Me Down, which is probably like the best song from that album. And then I would say the third album would be Time. I think Time is a very underrated, super underrated ELO album. I think it's really good.
So, you think for the 3 album one, you're wanting to do Out of the Blue, Discovery, and Time?
Yeah.
Okay, but what about just consecutive albums altogether? Not 3 album, but...
Oh, okay, I forgot. I think everything from Eldorado to Time, basically from 1974 to 1981, is like their run. So like Eldorado, Face the Music, a New World Record, Out of the Blue, Discovery, and then Time is their best run of albums.
Alright. Well, I haven't really given my opinion yet.
How a guy who has his feelings about Electric Light Orchestra has not said what his thoughts yet?
Yeah, well, I've said some thoughts on some stuff. I've given my opinions on specific albums, and of course, I've reviewed all their albums except for the first one up through Out of the Blue now on this channel. I'll be reviewing Discovery soon, but I do want to give my thoughts now on what I think the best consecutive albums are. So, as I said earlier, I don't like On the Day that much. I do like 1 and 2. I think 1 and 2 are great albums. I'm not a huge fan of On the Day. I do feel like it was important. I feel like it was necessary. But I do feel like it was kind of, it was the growing pains, I feel like, for the band. Eldorado, I'd say that is the start. Eldorado is great. It's one of their best albums. It is definitely a top 3 ELO album. Maybe top 2, maybe top 1. I'm currently kind of undecided, but it's in my top 3 of ELO's albums. After that, you have Face the Music. That's a great album. It's actually not in my top 3, but it's in my top 5. Great album. Very holistically kind of consistent. Works well together. Well paced. Great album. And it really does sort of set the stage for what's next. Then you have A New World Record. This is also in my top 3. As I said, maybe my top 2, maybe my top 1. Very great album. I do feel like it's maybe the most consistent album. It has just a great side 1, a great side 2. It's just non-stop bangles. I mean, the hits just keep coming with Jeff Lynne and Electric Light Orchestra. And it's a great album. After that's Out of the Blue. Out of the Blue, I think, definitely deserves to be included here. It's a great album as well. As I said in my review of it, I do feel like it occasionally has some pacing issues. And I do feel like the least good songs on Out of the Blue are weaker than the least good songs on Face the Music or A New World Record. But it is, I think, still a great album. And if you look at what it has, it has multiple, 10 out of 10 songs. You have the first 3 tracks alone. Those are great. The 4th track, I wouldn't say that's a 10 out of 10 song, but it's pretty good. I don't remember if I give it an 8 or 9, but it's a great song. Then, of course, you've also got Mr. Blue Sky on there. You've got Night in the City. You've got Sweet as the Night. All of those great songs. But yeah, really, with the opening 3 tracks on that album, I mean, it's just their way. It comes on strong. And it comes on very, very good. And as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of its pacing. But I do like it quite a bit, and it definitely deserves to be included. I'd say, though, if we're going by a strict definition of our classic era, this isn't what I'm considering the album one, but if we were going by a strict definition of our classic era, and we were to try to define that, I would argue that it is probably Eldorado through Out of the Blue, or if we were going even stricter for what I would say is the most famous, most consistent in terms of sound from one to another albums, 3 albums, I would say it would be Face the Music, and then A New World Record, and then Out of the Blue. That's not what I'm picking as my, of course, favorite 3 consecutive albums, but I do want to say those 3 albums do complement each other very well. They're very much kind of an era in and of themselves, a very high watermark, in my opinion. And then, of course, after that, we've got Discovery. Discovery is a great album. I quite like Discovery. It is the start of their sound changing, and I guess it is, in some ways, a start down a slippery slope, but you really haven't descended that much yet at that point. You're still pretty close. You still got Kelly Crockett. You still got, the strings. You've got all of that. And then after that, you have Time, which is, as a lot of people know, long been a personal favorite of mine. It's a lot different of the sound than what you have from, A New World Record. It was a lot more synth-driven. There was quite a bit of synth, especially starting on Face the Music. And I do like, honestly, in a lot of cases, 70s synth and more of an 80s synth. 80s synth, just in my opinion, sounds usually thinner and a bit kind of weaker and less kind of tangible than 70s synth, which is usually kind of a fickle sound. Time, I think, does it well. It mixes the same kind of top-notch songwriting. I think Jeff Lynne is still in his songwriting peak at that point with the synth, and he really takes the synth, though, to the extreme to some degree, in terms of he mixes it in where it is an integral part of the aesthetic of kind of this story and this aesthetic he's trying to give off of time travel and whatever, it's kind of a counterpoint to Eldorado. Eldorado's about this guy who's always wanting to dream and ultimately comes to the decision that, he would rather stay in his dreams than in the real world, whereas Time is there's this guy, he goes to the future, but once he's in the future, he realizes his mistake, and he would rather be in, what to him is, I guess, real world, what was his present, his time, then in the future. And so it's all about him going back. And so there's that it's kind of a counterpoint, him and the guy from Eldorado kind of come to these different conclusions in time. I think is a great album. It really explores its sort of aesthetic to the fullest. It's not too long. It's not too short. It is some of the best use of the synth in the 80s, in my opinion. Great album. After that, you have Secret Messages, and I think I'm going to end it there. I already kind of gave my thoughts on Secret Messages and Rounds of Power earlier. I think there's some great songs on Secret Messages. I mean, the full several songs in particular I like quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, I like Secret Messages, the title track, quite a bit. It sounds honestly like it could have been on time to me. I like Losing on Wild well enough. I really do like Blueboard. Four Little Diamonds is okay. I also like Danger Ahead, Rock and Roll's King. But, overall it is kind of weak, or you have less kind of interesting tracks like Take Me On and On, Stranger. I'll get around to reviewing this at some point, but I will say I do like the single LP version of Secret Messages better than the double LP. And it is, I think, a pretty good album. It's definitely better than Balance of Power, which I mostly just find forgettable. Yeah, so, I mean, I do kind of want to include 1 and 2, because I think they're great kind of orchestral symphonic rock, but prog rock kind of instrumental albums, and I do think Kuyama is one of the best, maybe, written songs by Electric Light Orchestra. I do think it is actually a well underrated standout in their catalog. So I really do like Electric Light Orchestra 1 and 2 quite a bit, but I don't feel like I can include them here because I really just don't care that much for On the Third Day. So, especially side 1 of On the Third Day, which in my opinion is awfully weak. I mean, you've got, like Ocean Breakup is kind of boring. King of the Universe, it's Blueboard is Dead, I said in my review, it has a pretty good lyric, but it's kind of delivered in kind of a weird stoned manner. Oh no, not Susan, that's boring, despite having kind of a funny name. It does have Showdown though, which is good, but I just don't feel like I can include this album, especially after I kind of savaged it in my review. So I'm going with Eldorado through Time, which I think that's the same one Matthew did, but I'm agreeing with Matthew here. That's what I'm going with as the best album 1. That's consecutive albums by Electric Light Orchestra by a, very strict definition.
Before we go on to the 3 best album 1, I want to say, after re-listening to On the Third Day yesterday, I don't think that it makes sense to exclude the first 2 just to exclude it. It's not that bad. But it was fine. I mean, is it like a brilliant album? No, but there's like a couple great songs on it, and I I enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah, but by the logic we used on, like, the Beatles episode, Ben, we excluded, that would say we should have included Beatles for Sale just to include A Hard Day's Night, and we didn't do that, so my opinion is, it's not about, like, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy On the Third Day. I have On the Third Day. As I said, I'm holding literally my copy of On the Third Day right here, right now. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy it to have it completed. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to it. It's a pretty good album. But I do feel like if we're going the greatest, like, consecutive albums of just non-stop bangles, one after another, On the Third Day just doesn't hit as hard as the ones on either side of it, honestly. And I will say, 1 and 2, they are a very, in my opinion, quite a bit different of the sound than what you got starting with Eldorado, or, well, even in some cases starting with On the Third Day here. So to some degree, I feel like it makes sense to start it with Eldorado, both in terms of quality, both in terms of excluding On the Fjord Day, but also in terms of just, I feel like that is really the most consistent period right there.
I mean, I think that makes sense. Honestly, I probably didn't use overly consistent methodology in the last episodes of this series we've done. I think that there's, yeah, I mean, I think that that's respectable at least. Like I said, I did think Eldorado through um, time or secret messages, I think also make sense, like you all did. But honestly, I think I feel more strongly positive towards the first three albums than Secret Messages. I at least can remember them better. But then maybe because I listened to them yesterday.
I'm certainly more positive towards Electric Light Orchestra 1 and 2 than I am Secret Messages. But as I said, I'm kind of undecided about Secret Messages versus On the Fjord Day. Like, the best song on either of those albums is Showdown. And, like, the second best is probably Ma Mama Belle. I do like the title track from Secret Messages quite a bit as well. But, as it is, side 1, with the exception of Showdown, which I don't even think was on the UK track listing, side 1 of On the Fjord Day is pretty weak.
Yeah, well, I actually liked their performance of Valhalla of the Mountain King, though it's not like anything super original. It was enjoyable to me.
I prefer the Who version, personally.
I mean, it's not like an amazing new composition or whatever, but I did enjoy listening to it.
I mean, it's pretty good. Of course, that's on side 2, but I do think the Who version, even if it was unreleased at the time that On the Fjord Day came out, I do think the Who version, the version of In the Hall of the Mountain King by The Who, is better than Electric Light Orchestra's version.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, yeah.
Just simply put, part of the problem is On the Fjord Day and Electric Light Orchestra 2 came out the same year, and to some degree I believe they were originally supposed to be one album, because clearly Mark Bolan from T-Rex, who is on the Fjord Day, although only on, I think, side 2 of it, was clearly playing on the sessions for Electric Light Orchestra 2, as there was a version that was been released on CD of like an early version that was like a kind of a concept of album that's like demos of Electric Light Orchestra 2 that has been released, and has him on it like throughout the whole thing. And me and Santiago had a discussion about this one day, but clearly, like, there did seem to be times that Mark Bolan and Roy Wood, who was only on the first 2 Electric Light Orchestra albums and only really sung on the first one, there were times they were clearly in the studio together and making Electric Light Orchestra 2. And from what I could tell, in 1973, you had the first Electric Orchestra album in 71, but then they had to do their contractual The Move album. In 1973, they had more than one LP's worth of good stuff, but less than 2. They released 2 albums. Most of the good stuff went on Electric Light Orchestra 2. And as I said, the more stuff that was moving in a different direction, that was kind of heading towards, like, the next couple albums, ended up on the Fjord Day, but oftentimes it was also then thrown together with some other random stuff, whereas Electric Orchestra 2 is the one that is more holistically consistent, not only with itself, but with the first album, whereas On the Fjord Day is kind of this kind of mishmash of kind of odds and ends. There's good stuff on here. There's stuff on here that I think could have been good if it had been done better, but overall, I just don't feel like I can include it in my one, because I just really don't like it that much. I gave it a 6 out of 10 in my review, which was better than I gave something like Steely Dan's Katie Lied. I actually gave that album an out bad review, but on the Fjord Day, I gave it a 6, which is still good. It's like, it is good. 5 is neutral, 6 is good, 7's better, 8's better, 9's better, 10 is better. It's still good. There's good stuff on here. I do like side 2. I just don't like side 1 all that much. And with all the albums that I'm discussing after that, with the exception of Xanadu, Eldorado, I like both sides of that. And so on and so on. I want to go on now to what we think is the best free album one by Electric Light Orchestra. Now, Matthew, you already told us yours, but do you want to reiterate, maybe, again?
Sure. Alright, so my 3-album run is Out of the Blue, Discovery, and then Time.
Alright. So, Ben, what do you think is the best free album one by Electric Light Orchestra?
I think that it is... No, not Secret Messages, I'm just kidding.
Secret Messages, Balance the Power, and Alone in the Universe, is that what you were gonna say?
You're forgetting about Zoom, Christopher.
Oh, yeah,
Zoom.
I keep forgetting Zoom exists. Yeah, so are you saying it's Secret Messages, Balance the Power, and Zoom?
Yeah, no, obviously not. I mean, yes, it is actually Zoom, Alone in the Universe, and From Out of Nowhere. That's all I gotta say. No, obviously not. It's Face the Music, a new world record, and Out of the Blue.
Alright, and why do you think that, Ben?
Well, I do like Eldorado. It is... Yeah, it's a good album. I enjoyed those 3 albums, I guess, the best. I mean, actually, I think I enjoyed Time the best, but as a collection, I think I enjoy the songs and listening to Face the Music, which obviously has Evil Woman, and it has Strange Magic. Then A New World Record has, I think, pretty consistently good songs. I mean, obviously, the most important ones being Tie Rope, Telephone Line, Rockoria, So Fine, Living Thing. Then, obviously, Out of the Blue has Concerto for a Rainy Day on it, as well as Thrones of Stone. I do think that one is maybe a tiny bit weaker than Face the Music and A New World Record, because of how long it is. Oh, it has Sweet Talking Woman, too. But I think the Concerto for the Rainy Day section is cohesion and abstraction of sorts. Its concept is well executed in a way, and ends obviously on such a great note, Mr. Blue Sky, that I think it is a prog rock masterpiece. And I think just that section alone, just side 3, is what is, even though Eldorado is obviously a rock opera and does maintain its coherent concept, I think Concerto for a Rainy Day, in terms of conveying its emotions, at least to me, worked better.
Yeah.
And that kind of just alone is, combined, I mean, not alone, because of the great songs on Out of the Blue. But it's Concerto for a Rainy Day that's really pushing it over Eldorado, I guess, for me.
Ben, if you think it's great, then why were you yawning?
I'm yawning because it's rainy outside.
Would you say it's a rainy day, and that you're waiting for Mr. Blue Sky to come back after being gone for so long?
Unironically, yes.
Unironically. Yeah, so, I will say, once again, on the subject of Concerto for a Rainy Day, I said earlier that Electric Light Orchestra, I thought it was impressive they could do these great, concept albums without having to make them double albums. Once again, with Concerto for a Rainy Day, Jeff Lynne was able to do it even more compactly on literally not even a whole LP, but just a single side of an LP. I mean, let's face it, that could have been, like, the greatest EP ever released if it had been an EP. As it is, the greatest EP ever released is Elton John's The Tom Bell Sessions, but anyways, well, Magical Mystery Tour, if we're counting that. So, anyways, yeah, Wild Frog, what are your thoughts on the greatest 3 consecutive ELO albums?
Well, mine will be a new world record, Out of the Blue and Discovery. I think that's like the golden era of Electric Light Orchestra, in my personal opinion. I think it's yeah, like in a new world record, you have telephone line, which is one of the best, I think, ballads, of ELO and music overall. I would say it's like a song that never fails me to make me emotional. Also, Living Thing and Above the Clouds. I think those are the one of the best songs in that album. Well, they are my personal favorites. Along, I also really like the last song of that album. I know, if I remember well, you didn't like that much
I like
the
it.
last song.
I like it. I just found it a lot weaker than the rest of the album. I do think Shangri-La is the weakest track of the album. I still do think it is a good song, though. Although I will say
Oh,
I like the song Shangri-La by the Kinks, which is a different song with the same name, better than the Electric
yeah,
Orchestra one.
yeah. I actually like that ending pretty much a lot. Uh, Aside that album, Out of the Blue, like Out of the Blue is just the music is just as colorful as the cover. It's like taking a colorful ride in the rainbow road of Mario Kart. That's how I feel when I listen to Out of the Blue. It's it's quite an album, like it has a lot of beautiful melodies, I would say. Like I love the opening. I think it's quite iconic just hearing that guitar starting of Turn to Stone, and then going to It's Over with those violins, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that uh, how do you say A side? Yeah, A side, the first side.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think it's like there's barely any other album that I feel so, like wow, like banger after banger, like Out of the Blue. The Concerto for a Rainy Day, I think it's the greatest thing that has ever happened to pop music. It's such a great. I love that medley a lot. Like if people just knew, the mainstream public that everybody knows about Mr. Blue Sky, but if they knew it's part of a medley, it's like that's overlooked. Like it's just amazing medley. Like I really like the symbology, like what it means, like going from a dark moment of your life that you are like in a storm. That's how it divided Jeff with through the rain and the weather seasons, and um, until the when the song comes out and like uh, things get better. I like the meaning of Concerto for a Rainy Day overall.
Yeah, I said that in my
Uh,
review of Out of the Blue that it is oftentimes, I think, sadly, Mr. Blue Sky is taken out of context, and it especially, I think, leaves the ending part of Mr. Blue Sky, what kind of goes back into a more
mhm.
orchestral feel. It does kind of leave that a little bit contextually stranded, and that more
Yeah,
people should listen to the whole concerto.
yeah, and I love how he implements the weather sounds like the rain and the storms. I really like
Yeah,
those little details.
Summer and Lightning has really great
Yeah,
sound to it, especially if you're listening on vinyl. The the bundle
yes,
kind of crackle to it sounds quite satisfying.
definitely. I feel that in this album there's a lot of those little unique moments. I will say like those fun moments of every song. That, for example, across the border, it has a nice Mexican trumpets. Meanwhile, like for example, Birmingham Blues, I think it is called.
Birmingham Blues.
Sorry, pronounce. Yeah, sorry, my English. It's kind of broken right now. I think yeah, it has such fun moments, like when the start this guitar like I don't know. It's very, very fun part. I don't even know how to describe this part, so you may not know what I'm referring to. But yeah, I think this album has a lot of special things in it. Like every song has something special, something fun to hear. Yeah, it's an album that I always enjoy listening. And Discovery, the last one, I think it's an album that has great. It's very solid album. It's really solid album. Yeah. It has like Last Train to London, that it's the single, one of the best of ELO. Also, a song that not many talk about. It's On the Run and Wishing. I think those are my personal favorite songs of that album.
Yeah.
Honestly.
On the One in particular, I feel like is always an underrated song.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Though, and yeah, the last song of that album is very iconic song. I think many people know that song, even if they don't know who is ELO. Don't bring me down. I think I've known this song since, I don't know, the beginning of my existence, and I didn't know it was ELO song.
The beginning of time.
Yeah, yeah. This album also has such solid songs, unique songs, same as Out of the Blue, same as A New World Record, and that's why that's my row, of three songs, well, three albums, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to say it's gross. Anyways, my favorite free album one, and if anyone's a long-term watcher on my channel, they're gonna know because I mentioned this in I think numerous videos, and I think this honestly might be the best free album one of all time. Is of course, in my opinion, and we've obviously already I think kind of foreshadowed this in this video as well, Eldorado, Face the Music, and A New World Record. So yeah, I mean, I think they're all very good. I have to include Eldorado. I do like Eldorado somewhat better, I think, than I'd like Out of the Blue. I am to some degree someone who prefers single LP albums, although I do like quite a few double albums as well. But, Eldorado, I feel like it's great, especially you've got songs like Poor Boy the Greenwood on it, you've got Laredo Tornado, you've got Can't Get It Out of My Head, you've got Eldorado, you've got Boy Blue, just great stuff on there, and it all works very well together. And honestly, it did kind of, in my opinion, set the stage for some of what later albums would do. It obviously, as I said earlier, set the stage for time. It also, in a lot of ways, set the stage for some of the more vignette songs of, like, Wild West Hero, in particular, from Out of the Blue. I feel like is kind of a successor to Eldorado in some ways. And, as I said, Out of the Blue, obviously. And I think that's great. Face the Music, once again, that was kind of where their lineup got solidified with Kelly Gurkut. And it has some of the most iconic songs. You have, of course, Evil Woman and Strange Magic, but you also have good stuff like Waterfalls, Fire on High, One Sun Will Stream. Just great songs all around, really. Night Rider, Poker, both of those I'd say are underrated songs, especially Night Rider. That's honestly one of my favorites. I said that when we were talking about Mr. Blue Sky in the overrated songs episode.
Yeah, that's such a great song. I always love listening Night Rider.
Yeah. Yeah, Night Rider is an amazing, really often overlooked song. It really feels like it should have been a hit. Honestly, I'm not so sure I don't like it better than Strange Magic. Personally. And then, of course, A New World Record. I think Santiago summed up A New World Record in a lot of ways already. Just banger after banger. Even what was, in my opinion, the weakest track on the album, Shangri-La, is a good song. Although, as I said, I do like the Kinks song, Shangri-La better, but you really, you start out with Tightrope, and you have Telephone Line, Rock Aria, then you have Symphony, you have Livin Thing, you have Do Ya. It's just non-stop bangles. Like, that's all I have to say. It's non-stop bangles all year round, and it's great. I mean, and I'd say my top 3 ELO albums are It, Eldorado, and Time. Now, there's no way really to get all 3 of those in an album one, but for consecutive albums, for consistency, those are what I'd pick. Now, I said earlier, I do think the one that, I think Ben, it was picked, that was Face the Music, A New World Record, and, Out of the Blue, I do think that is probably the most consistent in terms of format, because obviously Eldorado is a little bit different. Most consistent in terms of sound, obviously most consistent in terms of band lineup, since Kelly Gokut isn't on Eldorado. And I think that could be described as the, like, ELO at its peak, like, in terms of both kind of commercial and creative powers. But in terms of what I think of the best albums, like, creatively, it's Eldorado for me, and then it's Face the Music, and then it's A New World Record. Just great albums. I gave all 3 of those 10s out of 10s when I reviewed them. Go watch those reviews of those albums. And just great albums. That's all I have to say, really. I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. Does anyone else have any more thoughts they wish to share?
That everyone should listen to Electric Light Orchestra because it's the greatest band ever.
Yes.
What?
Alright, and that is all for today. I hope you will go watch the rest of my Electric Light Orchestra album reviews, and we will have more videos coming up soon, so please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.